So today I've got an arms race game for you, this time in the Kremlin. And of course, arms race plus Kremlin, we gotta be super duper aggressive. And that's what we're gonna do here, middle of the map. I was hoping to maybe go for this heal buff as our shells land short, unfortunately, on the Henry. I don't think I took quite enough time to aim there, so that's something I'm really trying to do these days. I've talked about this a little bit, but taking my time when aiming, I think that is going to help me to not have as many salvos that, well, land so short. So you see how much longer I take on the Brindisi here. We also maybe get a little better dispersion. Kremlin, of course, has a little better dispersion in close range compared to long range. And yeah, Dev Strike to start things off, it's going to be a good video. Unfortunately for us, though, our submarine kind of just leaves us in the middle of the map, and we don't have another DD here, and someone takes the heal buff. So we know there's at least a DD here, possibly the sub. So we're in a bit of trouble here, and we also have to deal with battleships. We can't just turn out and just give flat broadside. Although Kremlin's reasonably tanky flat broadside. Here comes the ping, and oh boy, here come the torpedoes. At least I'm in a battleship, though. I don't really know how to dodge these torps when I'm in a cruiser or a destroyer yet. But in a battleship, if you're going in a straight line that's maybe 30, 45 degrees away from where the submarine launched from, you should be able to dodge it without damage control. You should be able to slow down and turn in, and the torps will miss. Unfortunately for us, it's a blow, so he just turns around and gets his rear torps on us, and then there's nothing I can do. So the levels of counterplay here, truly stunning. I'm really not a huge fan of this, but we are absolutely destroying the enemy team that we can actually see, right? Where we actually can play the game. We're doing a good job so far. I can't stay here, though. I really can't stay here. I have no way of spotting this sub. We're just a sitting duck. We're gonna die. So we have to turn right and at least play a little bit on this side of the map. Fortunately for us, we do have a DD that's pushing extremely aggressively down there to the south as well. So we do have a bit of an escape route. Arms race, of course, is very much focused on the buffs at the beginning, and then we want to play very centrally to hold on to the middle cap. So I'm keeping this in mind as well. It's one of the reasons I try to play centrally in arms race especially. You'll notice that our team is so wide, right? Like they're just all in spawn or on the 1-2 lines, the 9-10 lines. It's really important to play a little bit towards the middle of the map. So that's what we're going to try and keep in mind as this game goes forward. Broadside Satsuma, and Kremlin is working today. It's just work. It's one of those days where the bias is strong, and Kremlin won't always look like this. This is a ship that really excels at close range. 14 kilometers is not where this ship's gimmick actually takes into effect, where it actually has really insane close range dispersion. It's around 12 kilometers, if you're wondering where Kremlin becomes one of the most accurate battleships. Below 12. Outside of that, though, it is a lot of RNG involved. Overmatch on the Henry, quite nice, but a Kurfürst is pushing around behind us. So we played aggressive. We're pretty overexposed here, I would say. We don't have a lot of support, and we have to push forward anyway, since we don't know where the enemy sub is. Could be already going into our spawn behind us. And there's a Kurfürst pushing us as well. So I'm a little bit worried about that, but I have to accelerate. I can't just sit here and let the Kurfürst get my broadside, because that's just an easy way to get dev struck. And Kremlin is reasonably tanky. Keep in mind, arms race, we already have some healing buffs and health buffs, so it's not exactly a stock Kremlin. We do manage to eat both of those torpedoes bow on. It's a bit of a thick ship too, but at least we are healing a little bit back, and Kremlin is known for being pretty tanky. Assuming we can take out the Satsuma, now that the enemy torpedoes have come by here from the DD, I can actually afford to turn out. So I had to hit that shot on the Satsuma, and I'm very lucky that the Oster decided to use both torpedo sets, giving me a way to turn away here. Of course, Satsuma does have a cheek citadel. That's how we were able to hit him there. And again, notice how we are just spending a little bit of extra time on every shot I'm taking. The very instant our damage control goes offline, the Henry does get a fire on us. Fortunately for us, we have the most broken commander in the game, Kuznetsov, so it's not like we're going to burn out here. But a little bit interesting RNG there from getting that fire. But I suppose I can't really complain too much considering the dispersion I've been getting this game. And considering it's arms race, we now have an 120k HP Kremlin starting to approach the new super battleship that the Russian tech tree is going to get in HP. I think that one's around 130,000 just normally. That'll be an interesting one to see in arms race, of course, considering how tough it is to even kill a Kremlin that has 120,000 HP. But we'll see when that one arrives. I'm not so sure about that. But Kuznetsov, as you can see, totally busted on a ship like Kremlin, where we probably end up getting close to death or even sinking if we don't have Kuznetsov. Of course, we have a really small superstructure, a very well armored ship. The superstructure is super saturated, so the HE isn't doing a ton of damage. It's really the fire ticking us out that would have got us there. And Kuznetsov saves us. It's really insane what this commander can do. Even on other Russian ships, of course, he's pretty amazing, but the tankier your ship is, the more guaranteed survivability you have when Kuznetsov activates, right? If you're activating Kuznetsov on a DD, you probably have like 2,000 HP left. And that's pretty easy to go through, even with a little bit of healing and damage control. But on a Kremlin, especially in arms race, keep in mind, arms race, yeah, he activates like 20,000 HP. And that's a lot of HP to go through if you're a Henry at max range or a Vermont at, what, 22 kilometers, right? That's not going to happen. Fortunately for us, our sub does manage to take out the enemy sub, so we can get back into the fight a little bit more. And yeah, we're gonna heal up and be just fine here. A little scary, but Kremlin is just that tanky. Keep in mind, it is arms race, so we did have some extra buffs keeping us alive there. I don't think in a normal game I would have necessarily lived through that scenario. I guess you could make the argument, though, that the enemy team had significant buffs to their DPM as well on their guns, so maybe they did more damage than otherwise. But still, I do think that we probably don't live that scenario in a random battle. It's just a little bit too out there as far as pushing into the enemy team with zero support like that. It's not going to go that well most of the time. The Henry does manage to get behind the rock. I was thinking I was going to do a bit better salvo there into him. But a little later on, we do manage to catch up with him as he's forced to push in. Of course, Epicenter is... Oh, sorry. I meant Arms Race is a lot like Epicenter. I get these two mixed up. I promise you I was about to say... I was going to start talking about how Arms Race is basically Epicenter with buffs for the winning team. I promise you I was trying to say starting with Arms Race and not just going straight to Epicenter. That's hilarious. But yeah, it is basically Epicenter with buffs for the winning team. So of course, we have more buffs, we're going to win this game. That's just how it goes. It's a bit of a steamroll type of game mode. So the end of these games tend to be a little bit less interesting, but I found this one to be so much fun because we were just so incredibly aggressive. Partially because we wanted to play aggressive in the Kremlin, although we did get forced to play a little bit too aggressive, more than I would want to, by that Kurfürst pushing and then just not knowing where the enemy submarine is. We do manage to get ourselves up into the enemy's face here with 54,000 HP and a heal remaining, right? The buffs are insane in Arms Race. I think it's an interesting game mode if they would dynamically control where the buffs are given. If you would start the game very symmetrical, and then as you see one team starting to win the game, it might be interesting to give the losing team 1 or 2 extra buffs that are very easy for them to get. That might give the game just a little more balance. I don't know. It might be frustrating in other ways, though, too. So it might just be a gimmick that I'd prefer not be in the game when I could have a regular domination game mode, right? But we're about to cap out here. The Vermont is, well, pretty well angled to us. We got ourselves up to a high caliber in this one. Of course, damage numbers being significantly inflated by, I think, a 17-second reload here on the Kremlin. And the alpha damage is insane as well, given that we have so many buffs, around 18,000 here as well. So, and yeah, it's a very difficult ship to take down in Arms Race, especially with Kuznetsov. I don't think that Kuznetsov is necessarily worth getting if you don't play these really tanky ships very often, right? If you don't have a Kremlin, if you don't have a Petro, it's a little harder to justify spending so much coal on Kuznetsov, but if you have these ships and you do want to play them fairly often, he's amazing. He's easily the most impactful commander out of all of them. And yeah, 253k, pretty good game, even given that it was Arms Race. 2.8k base XP. Kremlin can be an insanely fun ship sometimes. The RNG, though, on the main guns can be frustrating if it doesn't go your way, though. As for the build, of course, we're going with a tank build here, right? We're taking fire prevention. Concealment is also amazing on this ship. Didn't get a chance to talk about that as much, but 13.4 kilometers is pretty nuts for a ship that's this tanky, and especially one that wants to play at closer range with its improved dispersion. Adrenaline Rush is awesome. I really do want Emergency Repair Expert here, considering we only have 5 damage controls. It's a bit of the gimmick here with the Russian battleships. It's very strong. Most of the time, I use the first 2 or 3 of those damage controls instantly. I don't really see any issue with doing that. It allows you to play very aggressive without taking many of those sustained fires, and then using the last 2 or 3, depending on how much pressure I think there's going to be into the late game to carry, a little bit more cautiously. Maybe only use them for a double fire or a flood, that kind of thing, when you really need to. But it's important to use those consumables because the gimmick here is that you get a limited number, but they act so quickly. They're back up in 38 seconds. What you want to use to get the most value out of the ship. As far as upgrades though, you can't run range, so we're running main battery. Legendary mod. Yeah, I don't think it's worth it really to get even less range on a ship that kind of struggles with that. And the big thing here is 1 less consumable. That's really painful. This is not a legendary mod you want. Concealment Expert, I'd like to run Propulsion mod since we do have the fast acting damage controls. Fires aren't as much of an issue most of the time. Propulsion mod, combined with Kremlin's already insane acceleration, allows you to wiggle back and forth using your propulsion, forward, back, in open water or on an island, and you become a very difficult target to hit because the superstructure is also very small. Aiming systems mod, pretty standard. I'm using damage control party mod 1. I don't find my guns get knocked out a lot. There's no helping the AA. Even if you take this upgrade, there's essentially 0 HP on the AA modules, so they break anyway. So there's really not much point in taking that. So it's really main armaments mod 1. But I find that this damage control party is very interesting, given that I want to use these a lot, bumping the action time, that immunity period, up to 15 seconds. So yeah, I really do think Kremlin's a great battleship, especially if you're able to play aggressive and push in. That's not always the case, especially if there's carriers. This ship really struggles in those scenarios because a few HE salvos, the AA is all gone on this ship, and you're a sitting duck. But it's really fun in those opportunities you get to push in. An arms race is just perfect for this ship. It allows you to play extremely aggressive, especially with those extra health buffs and healing buffs, and it can be a lot of fun. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.